Ida for calling the police when I found party tents and audio gear being set up for my sister's retirement party on my coastal research cabin property. Without anyone getting my permission to use my federally registered tidal land, I knew something was off the second I turned down the gravel road and heard the bass thump before I saw anything. At first, I thought maybe it was just the wind carrying noise from town, but we were 10 miles from the nearest gas station. There shouldn't have been noise. Not out here. My name is Elias Mercer. I'm 32 years old. I live in Astoria, Oregon. I'm a marine biologist, and the cabin I was pulling up to, that was my sanctuary, my research station, my quiet. A couple times a year, I came out here alone. No visitors, no cell signal, to tag crabs, monitor tidal shifts, and breathe. So when I pulled around the final bend and saw white party tents staked across the tidal flats and a group of strangers unrolling cords toward what looked like a full DJ booth, I slammed the brakes so hard my gear bag tipped off the seat. What the hell? I muttered, stepping out of the truck. The sound was louder now, laughter, music, one of those battery-powered bubble machines spewing suds over the dunes. People in polos and clipboard lanyards were everywhere. Someone had set up coolers under the porch overhang. And when I stepped onto the path, a guy in a black headset jogged over like I was late to rehearsal. "You Elias?" he asked brightly. I blinked. "Yeah, who are you?" "Oh, great. The brother, right? We were wondering when you'd show." "You're totally fine. We've got everything under control. The team just needs another hour to finish the decking reinforcement and clear the South Marsh. Claire's gonna lose her mind. It's a perfect surprise." "Claire," I said, trying to make sense of his words. "Wait, Claire who?" He looked confused. Claire Mercer? Retired Army colonel? Your sister?" I stared at him, heart pounding. "This is my property," I said slowly. "Nobody cleared anything with me." He laughed, but it wobbled at the edges. "What? No, we have permits." "Well, not official permits, because it's family land. But the family signed off. I've got the docs right here." He flipped open a folder from the table and started rattling off names. My mom, my dad, my uncle in Boise, like that somehow made it legal. They'd listed my full name. They'd signed my land off as available. "You can't be serious," I muttered, scanning the page. It looked like a venue rental contract that had been altered in ballpoint pen to include things like owner is family, assumed shared access. None of this was okay. Not the vehicles parked in the native grasslands. Not the industrial generator blocking the boat ramp. And definitely not the fact that my family had handed over my protected tidal flat like it was a damn picnic site. "I didn't approve this," I said, "and I need to speak to Claire. Right now." The guy looked uncomfortable. "Oh, she's not supposed to know. It's a retirement party. Surprise. I think she's flying in tomorrow morning." I pulled out my phone and called her. Straight to voicemail. I tried my mom next. Then my dad. Then Claire again. Nothing. Back at the tables, someone uncorked a bottle of champagne. Laughter burst out. Bubbles floated over the wetlands I'd spent 5 years restoring. I stood there, surrounded by strangers on my own land, holding a phone with no answers and a contract I never signed. And I realized I was already losing this battle, and the party hadn't even started yet. It took another 15 minutes of pacing around the cabin before I finally got my dad on the phone. He answered like nothing was wrong. "Elias, you made it. Everything looked good." "Everything looked good?" I echoed. "Dad, there's a sound system bolted to the deck, and someone just asked where to install a margarita machine." There was a pause, then a long sigh. "Okay, look. The original venue fell through. Water damage or something. Your mom panicked. Claire was expecting something big. We couldn't let her down. We figured, hell, your place is perfect. You've got the view, the open space. You figured," I said, trying not to yell. "You didn't think to ask me?" "Elias, come on," he said, and I could already hear the guilt trip loading. "You've always cared about family. We assumed you'd step up. Step up. Like this was some moral failing on my part. Like not offering up my research site as a party venue made me selfish." "It's not about stepping up," I said, jaw tight. "It's about not being asked. You made a unilateral decision to invade my land." "We didn't invade anything," he said. "You make it sound like we showed up with pitchforks." I didn't answer. My mom picked up on the second ring when I called her next. "Oh, honey, don't be upset," she said. "We didn't want to bother you. It was an emergency. We knew you wouldn't mind." "You keep saying that," I said, "but I do mind." "And what emergency?" "There's 100 strangers setting up speakers on a crab nesting site." She lowered her voice like someone might overhear. "We wanted to make it special for Claire. She's been through so much. And this party, this surprise, it means everything. We didn't think it would be a big deal." "It is a big deal," I said. "I have tagging samples in cold storage. I have permits for protected shoreline that are tied to my name. If something happens, it's on me. There was a silence. Then, so what are you saying? You want to cancel? Ruin your sister's retirement party? And there it was, the wedge. Either I let it happen and swallow the resentment, or I become the villain who ruined Claire's big moment. I looked around. A catering crew was hauling lobster tails into my supply shed. Two guys were arguing over whether the platform could hold the weight of a dance floor. I ran a hand through my hair and took a long breath. Fine, I said finally. Let it happen. But I want legal paperwork, in writing, that says I'm not responsible for anything. Property damage, noise ordinances, injury, nothing. You signed me up without consent. So now I'm protecting myself? Of course, my dad said. If it makes you feel better. It didn't. I hung up and walked back toward the crew, plastering on a fake smile as I told the guy with the headset that they could continue, under specific conditions. Liability waivers. Restricted access to the marshes. No equipment near the specimen tanks. He gave me a thumbs up like we were buddies now. Knew you'd come around, man. You're the hero of this whole thing. But I wasn't a hero. I was just cornered, trapped in my own home, hosting an event I never agreed to, all for the sake of not looking like the bad guy in a family photo. And under it all, deep in my gut, I already knew this wasn't going to end well. By the time the first guests arrived, the place barely resembled my research station. String lights hung from the dock rafters. Folding chairs lined the bluff in neat rows. Someone had transformed my boat shed into a makeshift bar, complete with a tiki sign and a guy in a Hawaiian shirt pouring signature cocktails. I stood near the edge of the main path, clipboard in hand, trying to look like I belonged, but feeling like a stranger in my own space. The tide was rolling in, gentle and glassy. It should have been the perfect evening for monitoring crab migration. Instead, a jazz quartet played near my crab tagging station, and people kept stepping on the painted tide markers I just refreshed last week. I watched my parents weave through the crowd, beaming. My mom wore a pearl white shawl she only broke out for big moments. My dad slapped shoulders and laughed like he'd planned the whole thing himself. Then came Claire, flanked by two people I didn't recognize, both holding sparklers. When she saw the setup, she actually gasped. "Oh my God," she said, covering her mouth. This is insane." My mom rushed over. "Surprise. Your brother made it all possible." Claire looked at me and smiled wide. "You did this." I hesitated, then forced a nod. Something like that. She hugged me hard. "You're the best, Elias. Seriously. I had no idea you cared this much." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to push her back and tell her the truth, that I'd been blindsided, cornered. But another part just stood there, stiff, letting the lies settle in. The speeches started after sunset. A mic was wheeled onto the deck, and my dad gave a toast first. "This place," he said, raising his glass, "has always been special to our family. And tonight it's even more meaningful because of our son, our Elias, the most generous, thoughtful brother anyone could ask for." Applause rippled through the crowd. Someone shouted, "Host with the most," and everyone laughed. I stood there smiling like I was supposed to. But inside, something cracked. They weren't just pretending I'd agreed to all this. They were rewriting it, recasting me as some selfless figure who gave up his private space without hesitation. I hadn't stepped up. I'd been cornered into silence. All night, guests came up to compliment the venue. "Such a charming estate," one woman said. "You rent this out often?" Another asked if I had a website for bookings. Someone else joked about using it for a retirement weekend, if the price is right. Every time I corrected them, "It's not a venue. It's a research site," they just nodded politely and moved on. My sister gave her speech last. She thanked our parents, her mentors, her incredible friends, and finally, my brother Elias, who opened up his home for all of us. More applause, more smiles, more lies. I stared out at the shoreline, past the noise and fairy lights, to the dark water. It was the only thing that hadn't been touched, the only thing still mine, and even that felt temporary. The morning after the party, the silence felt surreal. No music, no clinking glasses, just wind pushing through the dune grass and the soft buzz of flies around the overflowing trash bins. The party crew had packed up before dawn. What they left behind was a graveyard of soggy tablecloths, overturned folding chairs, and muddy footprints across every inch of the main trail. I found my parents on the cabin porch, sipping coffee like it was any other weekend. "Morning," my dad said, like we'd all just come back from church. I didn't sit. I stood at the edge of the steps, arms crossed. "We need to talk." My mom glanced at him, then set her mug down. "Oh, don't look so serious. Everything went off beautifully. That's not the point." She sighed. "Elias, not today. Please, let's not ruin the glow of a perfect night." "No," I said flatly. "You don't get to call it perfect. You lied to me. You took my property and pretended it was a family picnic spot. You acted like my research didn't matter. My dad leaned back in his chair, unbothered. You're overreacting. I shook my head. This was never about the party. It's about boundaries. You walked over mine without asking. He scoffed. You're one man sitting on acres of land, like it's a museum. This place is meant to be shared. It's not a damn park, I snapped. It's a registered research site with environmental restrictions and federal tagging protocols. You wouldn't throw a kegger at a hospital lab, would you? That made him chuckle. Come on, don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic, I said. I'm setting terms. Going forward, nothing happens here without my written consent and at least 30 days' notice. Not a visit, not a picnic, nothing. My mom blinked, visibly rattled now. Elias, that's harsh. No, I said, voice steady. It's overdue. She reached for emotion like she always did. You're punishing Claire. She had no idea. This isn't about Claire, I said. It's about you too. You used her as a shield so I'd keep my mouth shut. My dad stood now, mug in hand. Jesus, Elias. We threw one party. One party that nearly compromised 2 years of field data. One party that brought 80 strangers on a fragile wetland. One party where you acted like I was a side character in my own life. My mom's lip trembled. We didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't even mean to ask me. The silence sat there between us, thick and bitter. My dad finally muttered. Well, you've made your point. No, I said. I've drawn a line. You cross it again, there are consequences. Legal ones. My mom blinked at me like I'd just threatened to cut them out of the will. I turned without waiting for a reply. Walked back down the steps, toward the path still slick with footprints. And for the first time in 2 days, I felt like I was on solid ground again. I didn't go back for 3 weeks. I told myself I needed a break. Let the marsh settle, let the salt pull the party stink out of the air. But really, I just couldn't stomach it. Every time I pictured the chairs lined up along the flats or heard that woman's voice asking, "Do you rent this out often?" my jaw would tighten. But the winter season was coming fast, and I had gear to prep. The lab fridge needed to be emptied and cleaned. The deck pulled and sealed before the rain set in. So I packed my truck and drove out, hoping that after a few weeks, maybe the sting would have faded. It hadn't. The moment I stepped out onto the path, I knew something was wrong. The moss was torn up in big swaths, like someone had dragged a pallet or rolled heavy carts across the wetland trail. My shoreline boardwalk had broken slats. 3 of them cracked clean through, 1 completely missing. I walked faster. The cabin door stuck. When I finally forced it open, a rush of musty air hit me. Salty, damp, wrong. I stopped in the entryway, heart sinking. The lab floor was buckled. I crouched down. The boards were warped and wavy, the finish peeling in long, curling strips. I followed the damage toward the far corner, near the electrical outlet and the specimen fridge. That's when I saw the stains. Big patches of dark, dried water, like something had sat there melting for hours, maybe days. I opened the fridge. It was empty. No trays, no labels. The logbook I usually kept clipped to the door handle was gone. I moved to the counter. My microscope was scratched across the lens, deep, almost gouged. One of the portable scopes was missing entirely. In the main room, the reading chairs had been shoved against the wall. My tagging maps, the ones I'd spent months annotating, had coffee rings and torn edges. Someone had used my precision scales as a makeshift bar tray. There were dents on the top from bottle caps. I stared at it all for a long time, not moving, just trying to absorb it. Then I grabbed my phone and called my dad. He answered on the second ring. "Hey kid, there's damage," I said. "Extensive. Floors, equipment, wetland trails. The boardwalk's compromised. The lab fridge was used for party ice, I think." A pause, then a chuckle. "Sounds like a hell of a night." "I'm not joking." "Oh, come on, Elias. What did you expect? A bunch of people having fun. Stuff gets scuffed." "Scuffed?" I said. "My microscope lens is ruined. There's structural damage to the deck." He sighed, like I was the one exhausting him. "You're acting like we burned the place down." I didn't answer, just ended the call. And for the first time, I realized something even worse than being taken advantage of. They didn't just cross a line. They didn't think the line mattered. I spent the next 3 days documenting everything. I took photos of the warped flooring, the cracked deck boards, the trail erosion. I pulled receipts for the damaged gear, cataloged every missing item, and cross-checked against the equipment inventory I'd last updated in July. It was worse than I thought. One of my waterproof field tablets was gone. The tide gauge sensor had been removed, probably to make room for the party's dock lights. The samples in the fridge? Irreplaceable. I emailed my insurance agent, told them what had happened, attached the photos, filled out every damage report form they sent me. 2 days later, my phone rang. Mr. Mercer, we've reviewed your documentation, the agent said. Unfortunately, your policy doesn't cover third-party event use. It's categorized as a private research property. Hosting a public gathering without prior notice invalidates the claim. I blinked. It wasn't my event. I didn't host it. She hesitated. But the paperwork says it took place on your land, correct? Yes, I said, but I didn't authorize it. I understand. But unless you can prove you were unaware, or that someone forged your signature, the liability remains yours. It felt like a joke, like the kind of Kafkaesque nightmare you tell people about, and they laugh because surely it didn't happen like that. But it did, and it got worse. That afternoon, I got a certified letter in the mail. Notice of injury claim. Case hashtag 9438, LC 57. Claimant, Mrs. Angela DeWitt. I opened it, hands already shaking. Inside was a formal notice. A guest had injured her wrist stepping off the wet dock during the retirement party. She was filing a liability claim for medical costs, pain and suffering, and loss of work hours. I read it twice, then 3 times. My name was on every page. My property, my dock, my alleged negligence. I called my dad again. She's suing me, I said. One of your party guests. He sounded half asleep. What? Who? Someone named DeWitt. She fell off the dock. Says it was slick and unmarked. A pause. Oh, right. I remember her. She slipped after the toast. Probably had too many drinks. You'll be fine. Just tell them she shouldn't have been walking there. You mean on the dock? He grunted. It's not like she was invited by you. Just tell the lawyer she was part of the party. There's no lawyer, Dad. Just me. Because I didn't disclose an event, my insurance premium is tripling, and they're not covering the claim. He made a dismissive sound. You're handy. Just patch the floor and get on with it. You always make things a bigger deal than they are. I had to laugh, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe how calm he sounded. You owe me, I said. This was your party. You and Mom made the call. You signed my name to those documents. There was a long pause. Then, I'll send you something. 3 days later, a check arrived. It was made out for $400. The lab flooring alone would cost over $2,000. The microscope? Nearly $3,800 to replace. And the legal defense for the injury claim? The consultation alone ran $500 per hour. I stared at the check for a full minute, then folded it neatly and put it in a drawer. I wasn't cashing it, not because I didn't need the money, but because it wasn't money. It was an insult. They handed me a party I never wanted, left me with thousands in damages and a lawsuit, and expected me to just patch it up like nothing happened. I looked around the cabin, at the warped floor, the peeling tide charts, the hollow space where my scope used to sit, and I realized I wasn't just cleaning up a mess. I was paying for someone else's fantasy in blood, time, and debt. I didn't want to go the legal route, but after the liability claim hit and my insurance company all but washed their hands of me, I had no choice. I hired a local attorney, someone who specialized in property disputes and small business liability. We started building a case to prove that I hadn't authorized the event, that it had been arranged by my parents under false pretenses. That meant legal discovery. That meant digging. What I didn't expect was how deep the betrayal would go. My attorney requested all correspondence related to the event, emails, texts, contracts, anything that connected the planning crew to the people who signed off. He subpoenaed the production company who handled the tent rentals. Within a week, he had a file in his inbox labeled Family Coordination, Mercer Event, Fall. He forwarded it to me. I opened it that night at the cabin, sitting in the same chair where I'd once logged crab migration times at midnight with a thermos of coffee beside me. The first email was from my mother to the event coordinator. If the Bluff site's still available, let's lock it in. Our son owns the land, and it's family property. He's protective, but he won't say no if it's urgent. We'll handle him. The next email was worse. Claire, replying in a group thread with my parents. Just let me know what I need to say if he calls. I don't want to make it worse. I'll play along like it's last minute. Then my mom again. Exactly. He caves under pressure. Always has. That's why we're doing the surprise angle. Less chance of him shutting it down. My heart dropped. There were screenshots too. A text from my mom to Claire, dated 2 months before the party. Mom, he'll fold if he thinks it's an emergency. Just act overwhelmed. It'll be fine. Claire, I feel bad tricking him like this. Mom, don't. He gets stuck in his own world. This is bigger than him. He'll come around once he sees how happy it makes everyone. I didn't even realize I'd stopped breathing. The whole thing, the last-minute venue scramble, the calls I didn't get, the documents I never signed, it had been planned, coordinated. They built a trap and walked me into it, counting on me to shut up like I always had. I stared at the emails for a long time. Then I called my parents. My mom answered. Hey, sweetheart. I saw the emails, I said. Silence. I saw what you sent to the event team. I saw what you told Claire. She inhaled. Elias, I didn't mean for it to come out that way. We were just trying to manipulate me, I said. That's what you were trying to do. You don't understand, she said quickly. We had no other options. It wasn't supposed to hurt you. I had no choice. You always had a choice, I said. You just didn't respect mine. Then my dad's voice in the background. It was for the good of the family. Don't make this into some betrayal. I laughed, bitter and low. It is a betrayal, and you knew it. I hung up. No screaming. No last words. Just the sound of the call ending and the weight of something breaking clean in two. They hadn't just used me. They'd planned it. They counted on me being too loyal to fight back. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't. I didn't tell them right away. Not in words. I started with a letter, short, direct, typed out and mailed to their house in Portland. No emotional paragraphs. Just a clear list of decisions. As of that day, my parents were no longer permitted to access my property under any circumstance. Any future event requests must go through a formal process, with legal contracts and proper notice. All family visits, including holidays, were suspended indefinitely. It ended with this. You crossed a line deliberately. You don't get to decide what's mine. Not anymore. The letter hit them 2 days later. I got a text from my dad that just said, very mature. My mom left me a voicemail I didn't listen to. Claire called too. I let it ring once, then answered. She didn't start with excuses. Just a quiet. I didn't know it went that far. You played along. I thought it was just a harmless surprise. I didn't know they forged documents. Or used your name. They didn't forge, I said. They just counted on me being too passive to say no. She paused. I'm sorry. Her voice cracked, and I believed her. Claire had always followed our parents' lead. She was used to letting them drive the car, even when it went off the rails. I should have said something when Mom asked me to pretend, she added. I just wanted it to go smoothly. You're still welcome here, I said. But next time, you ask. She exhaled, audible relief. I will. And that was the difference. Claire owned her part. She didn't double down or pretend it hadn't happened. But the rest of the family? They circled the wagons. My cousin sent me a DM. Heard about the drama. Your mom's pretty upset. Maybe just let it go. An aunt left a comment on my Facebook post about wetland restoration. Shame to see family torn apart over a party. Somehow, I was the dramatic one. The ungrateful one. The kid who dared to draw a boundary and stick to it. But I didn't respond. I didn't justify. I didn't explain myself to people who had never once asked what mattered to me. Instead, I called Claire a week later and invited her out. Just her. No noise, no tints, no performance. We sat on the dock that afternoon with hot coffee and silence between us, watching the tide ease in. This place is beautiful, she said quietly. It was, I said. I'm still trying to get it back. She nodded. You will. And for the first time since that awful weekend, I believed it. Because even if the damage was still raw, the lies, the money, the betrayal, something else had surfaced too. Clarity. I didn't need every branch of the family tree. I just needed the ones who saw the roots I was trying to protect. Spring came late that year, with long rains and fog that clung to the coast like a second skin. I didn't mind. It gave me an excuse to rebuild, alone, slowly, on my own terms. First thing I did was install a coded gate at the trailhead. Then I filed a new land use declaration with the county, updating the parcel's designation to Restricted Research Zone, with clearly posted limitations. I added cameras to the porch, re-upped my insurance, and wrote an airtight waiver template with the help of my lawyer. From now on, every visitor would sign it, even if it was just a friend stopping by for lunch. I also applied for a small grant to replace the equipment that hadn't survived the party. Didn't cover everything, but it helped. I replaced the warped lab flooring myself over 2 long weekends, tearing out each board while rain drummed steady on the roof. It felt good. Not just the work, but the ownership. This was mine again. Not a family asset. Not a favor. Not a blank canvas for other people's celebrations. A few weeks later, I sent Claire a message, thinking of having a quiet birthday get-together here. Just a few people. You in? She replied almost immediately. Absolutely. And I'll bring pie. Promise we'll behave. I laughed and texted back. There's a waiver for that now. The gathering was small, 6 of us total. Just Claire, 2 old college friends, and a couple colleagues from the university lab. We grilled fresh fish on the deck, told stories, watched the tide rise beneath a cloudless sunset. No tents, no sound system, no strangers. Just people who respected the space and me. Before everyone arrived, I walked the perimeter, checking the new signage and markers. I paused at the bluff, where the rental crew had once set up champagne tables and bubble machines. Now it was quiet again. The crabs had returned. The eelgrass was recovering. I stood there for a moment, hands in my pockets, breathing it in. Not just the ocean air, but the stillness. The peace that comes when the noise is gone and the boundaries are clear. Later that night, after the others had left and Claire helped me wash the last dishes, she looked around the lab with a soft smile. "You got it all back," she said. "Not everything," I said, setting down a clean plate. "But enough." She hesitated. "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" "I don't know," I said. "Forgiveness is one thing. Letting them back in is another." Claire nodded slowly, not pushing. She understood now that it wasn't about one party or one lie. It was about ownership, of land, of time, of self. When she left, I locked the door behind her and stood on the porch a while, the surf murmuring in the distance. For the first time in months, the cabin didn't feel invaded. It felt whole. It felt mine. And I wasn't giving that up again. Not for anyone.